Thanks for joining us today, everybody. It looks like we've fairly stable numbers of people in now, so we'll get going with the session. Just to cover off the introductions of the Bloom team that is with us today, we have myself, Kevin Berry, the Finance Director within Bloom. We have Ben Darrah, our Pro-vide 2 product owner. We have Jill Brittlebank, who is our Head of Client Solutions. We have Paul Mander, our Procurement Director, and we have Alex Wright, our Senior Marketing Exec. I was just about to say, as a reminder to everybody, we have a Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. If you do have any questions throughout, please put them into the box and we'll answer them at a couple of points throughout the session. But yes, the session will be recorded. It will be shared with anybody who has registered, and we also load versions of our webinars onto our YouTube channel, so it will be available to everybody afterwards as well, including the slide deck as well for everybody. So yeah, so today's session really is about self-billing within our process, how our self-billing portal works and how you can access the self-billing documents. And I'll talk us through the downstream process of the invoicing process and our finance process within Bloom. And Ben will then take us through a demo of the invoicing portal himself and show you guys what it looks like and which buttons to press and how to register. We'll then pause to do an initial Q&A on that part of the session. And then I will hand over to Jill, who's going to talk to us about organisational change in the public sector. And Paul will then shine a light on how you can collaborate with Bloom more widely across different opportunities that we have. So without further ado, we will get going. So this really is an overview of the downstream process that we have within Bloom. And this is assuming that you guys have been awarded a piece of work, you're all fully accredited, and you're actually out there delivering work now. And this really comes into play from the point that you're starting to reach milestones on a work order and you're starting to want to raise billing with us. So this is where this process kicks in, and it relates to the process on our Pro-vide 2 platform across NIPRO frameworks, which is 99% of all the contracts we do. So the chances of everyone on the call today is part of that process. So really, you've been awarded work at this stage, and as I say, you've reached your first milestone, and you need to take some action to be able to recover invoiced amounts. So the first action that you take is to submit STP. So STP is a service delivery plan, which is essentially a summary of all of the work that's been delivered to date against a milestone, the value of that piece of work, whether the project overall is on track or off track. Beyond that, it's not something we're going to dive into in too much detail today, but we have done separate webinars on that subject, and there will be more coming up in the future. So feel free to look up one of the videos on our YouTube channel related to this service delivery plan submissions specifically, or register for a webinar that comes up in the future when that comes back around as one of the topics we cover. Once you've submitted that service delivery plan with the details and the values, what happens then as someone from the buying entity, from the buying authority, approves that submission, says, yes, we agree that piece of work has been delivered, and yes, we agree with that value. And it really is that approval that triggers all of the payment terms within our contracts with you guys as suppliers. The next stage is what we're going to drill into today a bit more specifically. So this is where the invoicing takes place once that buyer approval has been received. And what happens within Bloom's system at that point is that we generate 3 invoices, 3 separate transactions. We invoice the buying authority from Bloom for the amount that was submitted on the service delivery plan. We raise a self-billed invoice on your behalf to Bloom. So your invoice from yourself to us, we generate that on your behalf in what's called a self-bill invoice. As I say, we'll drill into that more today. And we also raise our management fee invoice to yourself. So that's our invoice to you for the 5% management service fee we charge. So all of those take place at the invoicing stage. And then generally speaking, but based on the contracts we hold across NIPRO frameworks, buyers will then pay Bloom within 14 days, and Bloom will then pay the supplier within 30 days or 14 days after receipt, whichever is the latest. So drilling into self-billing more specifically now, as I said, really, this is Bloom raising your invoice to Bloom on your behalf. So where you would normally generate a sales invoice, this is Bloom taking that admin away from you and trying to support you and generating that transaction on your behalf. And there is a self-billing agreement which is signed up to as part of the accreditation process. And that agreement between the two parties is that essentially this document that Bloom generates becomes the valid VAT document for tax purposes. The invoice is downloadable from our Provide to platform, as Ben will demonstrate to you shortly. And you guys as suppliers, you guys can download that, record that invoice in your systems, or record those invoice references in your systems, and that will help us with queries and the timeliness in which we can answer questions about those invoices. And it's also the reference number from the self-bill invoice that HMRC would expect you to quote if they were to audit you or to ask for any information relating to it for any reason. And as I say, it is also the reference that's included on our remittance advices and management fees. So that self-billed invoice reference really is key to the whole process, and it does make the process easier. And we will try to point you guys towards that reference and help you guys find it if you are having struggle or if you haven't yet registered for that part of our system. So just a quick look at what is in and what's covered by the self-billing agreement. So in regards to this agreement, the customer is Bloom and the supplier is yourself. And really as part of the agreement, you accept effectively that we will raise the invoices on your behalf, and you agree not to raise sales invoices for that transaction. It will be distributed externally. There's standard HMRC wording for these agreements. And in practical terms, not raising an invoice is very difficult, as most people have systems that automatically generate an invoice at the end of a process. And actually, it's widely accepted by most parties that actually, if you cannot stop it, the purpose is not to distribute it and to refer to our invoice as the legal tax document. So just a quick example of what the self-billed invoices look like. And as I say, Ben is going to take us through a little demo shortly that will show you where you can find these and download these as well. So it captures all of the information you would expect to find on an invoice. It's got your invoice number and reference. It's got the dates they were issued, and the date will always be the date the service delivery plan was approved. So if you think back to that point in the process where the buyer is saying, yes, we agree this work has been done, and yes, this is the value, that's the date that is captured here, and that's the date that relates to the payment terms and everything as well. So it's quite important that that's all captured. And it displays all of your details and the value relating to that piece of delivery and any VAT owed if you are VAT registered. And just very quickly, as a recap, as I say, the reference, the invoice number really is key. It flows through a lot of our processes. It flows through a lot of the information we then share with you in terms of remittance advices and queries that you send into us are very, very easy to answer with that reference if it is provided. And as I say, if you can't provide it when you're getting in touch with us, we will try to direct you to that document in the first instance to make sure that we're all talking about the same thing. And also the invoice document is very important that you guys can access it and store it, because as I say, it is the document that you've agreed to use part of the self-billing agreement, and the HMRC would expect you to be able to produce it if required to do so. So we'll move into the demonstration with Ben before we move into any Q&A. Ben, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. So I'm going to show you the system as it looks on the invoicing portal. The first thing to say is this actually sits alongside our sourcing portal. So where you will have gone in to respond to a tender, and where you will approve and review your service delivery plans and the submissions. This actually does sit separate to that, alongside it. So it's within the same system, but it is cordoned off, and that's for security reasons, really, with regard to the fact we have financial documents within here, and also that it's often used and focused for a different audience, which is usually the finance audience in terms of access of that information. So you will need a different login to this system. Now we will send out an invite to the key account holder that has set up the relationship with Bloom at the point of your first project with us. So if you are already involved in projects through Bloom, you will have received that invite. Now, if you don't have access to the system currently, that will likely be because that invite's gone to the key account holder, and actually either you sit within a finance department or somewhere else within the business, and that hasn't been invite hasn't then been sent over to you guys to have access. And I can show you how that key account holder will be able to do that. So if you don't have access, please do drop us a note either in the comments or the contact email at the end of the session, and we can pick that up and make sure you do have access to it going forward. So it's relatively straightforward in what this system will do. I'm going to show you where, first off, you can access your sales orders and then the sales invoices within the system. Along the left-hand side is the navigation. We've got the home, we've got our orders, which is sales orders, and the invoices are accessible in there. And the other key bit is going to be managing your users, which is where that key account holder can go in and invite multiple additional users into the platform. So then those users can also go in and find invoices and the sales orders as well. So if I first up go to the top on that left-hand side into sales orders and shipment and search for sales orders, that's actually going to bring up a list of all the sales orders with a PO reference for projects you currently have with Bloom. Now, if you haven't set up the portal currently and you already have running projects, when you do set up the portal, though that information will pull through. So any existing sales orders and invoices that have already been generated as part of your projects will be shown within here. It may take an hour or so just for that to pull through with the integration. So give it a little bit of time to then go back in and check and make sure all of that information is visible to you. So when you log in, you'll see an overview of those sales orders. Now that will actually default currently to those within the last 90 days. You can also then apply that to all and see all of the sales orders, and that will pull up as so. The reference there, then you've got a sales order number, again generated the Bloom number, and a PO number as well that will be visible within there. You can then also search and drill down using a number of the filters on the right-hand side to find what you need. So we've got PO number, sales invoice number, completed dates, etc. So there's a number of filters you can use to then start drilling in further into finding the information you need. But also what's probably most useful is also using the quick search to find the project you need as well. So you can use that to search and then find any projects that are called that, obviously within the system. You can also then both search on a project name, for example, so if it's business change, or if you have a specific milestone as well that's correlating to a project, that will also drill down and find that specific sales order that you can then pull up. So if we click into that sales order, that's going to show you the document information. So you've got your usual header level information, general information set up, the build to being Bloom, some distribution information, which is more around the system, but critically, you've then got your payment schedule that will sit within that sales order and the values corresponding to that. So this is the payment schedule as created once the project's been awarded and was on that work order documentation as approved and signed. So you have that record of information in there. And then critically, you can also find the invoices that are sitting alongside this particular project and this particular sales order. So if you click along the top here, we've got the navigation. You can click into your invoices, and here you're going to see all of the invoices that have been generated against that project. Again, you can then drill down to the specific invoice as well. Now that invoice number that you'll see there is that number that Kevin referred to, which is the generated invoice number, the ID, and the official number for those HMRC purposes. So that's that we'll use to reference in correspondence with Bloom when you and if you do need to get in touch with us to trace or to check anything. So in here we have that first up within the system itself. It will show you that invoice information. So the PO number, the payment schedule line, the description. So that should be the milestone correlate as part of the work completed within the project, and obviously then the values and any VAT information. Now, as Kevin said, you can download that and obviously store that somewhere else if you need to. So at the top here, we have the download icon. If you click on that, that will pull out the invoice and you can then save that and attach that in any of your record systems if you need to as well. So if I then come back into that documentation, if I then want to search on a specific invoice, so within here in the orders, we can go on the sales orders and pull up a project level. You can then search for your sales invoices as well specifically. So this will show all invoices generated across all projects within that you'll have through Bloom. Now these will be visible. So we mentioned the approval. So when the buyer does approve your submission, it should be visible within here, assuming you've got it set up properly and everything's ready within around 15 minutes. So that invoice will generate very quickly. And then we go through the payment process from there. And currently this will only be the actual the invoice, the management fee invoice that Kevin referenced will be sent through as a separate document to your finance department. So again, in here, we've got a list of all of those invoices with the invoice ID. And again, you can search for the specific milestone or the project. Again, if you want to search at an invoice level to pull those up, so I can see all the invoices for a business change project. Or conversely, if I want to search for a specific milestone, you can do so as well. If there is any there within those days, you can pull those up. So if I spell that wrong, you can then pull up your invoice, click in, and you'll see that that corresponds to the milestone within the project. Again, once you've accessed that invoice, you can also download and pull out that invoice specifically, again, for your records. There's messages, attachments within here which aren't used often, but there may be some stuff in there. You can also see the history as well. So if you do want to see the journey of that invoice within the history file there as well. And as I say, the date there will correspond to the SDP approval date within the Bloom sourcing system. So that's the core level of information in terms of that access to your financial documentation. As I say, you can clear filters, and there's a number of other quick filters within here on the left-hand side. So you can see what status, so in processes mean it's running through our system. Payable then means it's ready to go out and get the money for that. You can filter on invoice or credit memo as well within those quick filters. The other element I was just going to show you, so if you use the home screen, you'll come back. You can search and find an invoice if you have the Bloom invoice ID as well. So this won't link through to any of your own internal IDs, but if you know the Bloom ID, you can find that invoice using the search feature on the home page as well. The last bit I was going to show you is just around managing users. So as I say, the invite will go out to your Bloom account holder, so the person who set up the account with Bloom originally, who's the key account holder, and they will need to then set up the finance portal to then invite anyone in. Once they've created that and set up the portal, you can then invite as many people within your business into the portal, so they also have access to the financial documentation. So that's a case of just adding first name, last name, a phone number, and an email address as a minimum. They can then send that request. That will ping out an email to whoever that has picked it up, and they will be able to follow a link on the email to complete their account, and then they too will be able to go into the system and access that documentation. So again, if there is any issue you have with not having access currently, please do drop us a note on the comments or an email via the email that will come up at the end of the session, and I'll be able to go in and look at that for you and see where you are on the journey of the setup. And if we need to resend out an invite, we can do, or if we need to change the key account information so it goes to someone else within your business so they can do so, we can do that as well. So I'm going to pause there and go back to Kevin and see if we have any questions on that.
Yeah, so we've got a few questions coming in. Thank you everybody for sending these in. And as I say, we'll pause now for a quick Q&A, but we will revisit Q&A at the end of the session as well. And as Ben pointed out at the very end, we will flash up some contact details as well, should anybody need to contact us afterwards via email. So we've got a couple of questions in from Louise in the first instance. So the first one being is, can we opt out of self-billing? Now, I guess this is a two-part answer in that, yes, anybody has the right to opt out of a self-billing agreement. The reason it's a two-part answer is that if you choose to opt out of a self-billing agreement, it would effectively invalidate your accreditation with us because the process is only designed to work under self-billing currently. We may pursue different options in the future, but for now, the process only works under self-billing. So yes, of course, anybody can opt out, but it will limit your ability to trade through our portal at the moment. The second one from Louise, thank you again, is that they need to bill in period for a project and it's unknown when the SCP would be approved. Yes, we appreciate that, and it's a common issue with suppliers and trying to get the correct tax points and dates on to invoices. So it does, for us, on average, take a buyer just under 7 days to approve a service delivery plan. Some are much faster and some are much slower. We're happy to facilitate conversations specifically between yourself and the stakeholder, the buying entity, and agree some timelines up front for submissions and approvals. But the majority, bar a very few accepted handful of buyers, actually have opted into an auto approval at 14 days if no approval takes place. So actually, the longest you should ever wait for an approval is 14 days, but on average, it does take just under 7. So hopefully you can build that into your timetables. But as I say, if there is a specific timetable we need to try and agree between us, yourself, and the buyer, please reach out to us, and we're quite happy to facilitate that conversation if needed. Question up next from Rachel. I think you may have covered this, Ben, in your presentation there, but can the invitation be sent to the key contact holder, and what happens if they've left the company? Now, I think if you contact Ben at the end, based on some of the provide 2 contact details that flash up on the final slide, then we'll be able to address who has access and perhaps set that differently. Ben, is there anything to add there?
No, yeah, if that person's left, yeah, and hasn't invited anyone else, then we can reset that information. That's not a problem.
And can we bill a partial stage or a partial milestone? Yes, absolutely, you can, as long as it is within the overall value of the original agreement. That will take place very easily. If the values have changed, again, we can redistribute those across the milestones if required, with the agreement of yourself and the buying authority. But absolutely, you can bill a partial stage if agreed and if required. Can you search by PO number in the portal? Yes, I think the search function is very flexible within there. Ben, you demonstrated quite a few different ways of searching there. I think we're correct in saying you can absolutely search by PO number in there as well. Yeah,
you can definitely do that, yeah.
And invites are usually circulated to access that portal as and when accreditation, either when accreditation goes live or when a contract is awarded. Ben, you'll have to keep me right there.
Yeah, so that'll be on the award of the first contract for a first project. You'll be invited out. So it may be a case that at that time that invite was missed and you've had subsequent projects and that was never picked up and the account never set up. We can then resend that invite out if that's the case, or if needed, we can change who that's gone to if there's actually a change in key contact, or if that needs to sit somewhere else in the business and actually that was a finance role, should be the person that's picking up and managing the portal.
Yeah, thanks for that, Deborah. And finally, for now, before we move into Jill's presentation, and as I say, we will come back to Q&A at the end as well. So please add more questions to the Q&A box if needed. Charlotte has asked if there is a simple way to see which buying authority the invoice relates to. Now, off the top of my head, depending on the descriptions that are in the project or in the milestones, I don't think so, but actually we will get in touch with you at the end and via email and maybe discuss that in a bit more detail. Ben, I don't think it does display on the front screens there anywhere.
No, and that is one thing we're looking at, yeah, because Bloom essentially sit as the buying organisation, that will show as Bloom at the moment. But I appreciate that, yeah, that's something that would be eminently helpful. So we are looking at how we may be able to do that and pull that through into there so that you can search via that function.
It's possible that we can, in the short to medium term, provide you with a list of all the open orders we have and which PO number relates to which buyer. So you guys can have that as a log. But again, there's some contact details that'll flash up at the end. Just feel free to fire in that as a request if required. So, passing the Q&A, I think we will hand over now to Jill, who's going to talk to us a bit more about organisational change in the public sector.
Right, I knew I was going to be the one not to go off mute straight away. So thanks very much, Kevin. I'm struggling to get change there. I was going to say I'm struggling to get control, but I'm there now. So I think we'll start. I wanted to start just by making sure we're on the same page in terms of the definition of what we mean by organisational change. And for purposes of today, it means changing any major component of an organisation, such as culture or process or infrastructure technology. But in terms of NEPO 3 framework, the three main themes are around people, target operating model, and transformation. So if we just touch on each of these, firstly, people, which is much broader in scope than just structure. People can include, or we see projects that include organizational culture, HR service models, coaching and development, talent management, change management, and communication. In terms of the target operating model, the second pillar, if you like, this is the who, what, how of organizational change. So how organizations are using people and process and technology to apply their strategy and vision to the business. And then finally, in terms of transformation, transformation projects tend to be large-scale strategic projects, support long-term objectives like making services more accessible, re-imaging service delivery, or saving money and redeploying resources. In terms of commissioning organisational change work, it's very much more trigger driven than a lot of the projects that we get involved in, which tends to be more cyclical in terms of spend. Some of the common triggers that we see are new leadership at the helm of the organisation or shifts in team structure, implementation of new technology or the emergence of new technology. So AI is a good example of something that's emerging and just starting to be considered as part of organizational change. And then the adoption of new business models. So for example, shifting from functional to user-centric organizational structures. And then of course, COVID-19 can't be understated. The impact of the pandemic on catalysts for change, particularly in our public sector organizations. Leisure and hospitality services and shopping centres closed, so demand for many of public services fell away, and budget pressures as a result meant that non-essential spending was paused or cut entirely, as we saw through the projects that we were working with last year. Organisations at the same time really had to reinvent how they were working, adopting flexible or remote working and redeployment of resources, which all cast a spotlight on three areas. So workforce transformation, of course, cultural transformation to support that flexible working, and service provision overall. And these are key changes that were triggered by COVID, but are likely to remain in focus. And there are a couple of areas that are generally believed to be, that will have a continued focus over the coming year. So first of all, the trend towards flexible working from home. So 70% of public sector employees stated a preference for working from home, and 97% stated preference for more flexible working models. But the flip side of flexible working, of course, is the potential for public sector organisations to use the shift to secure a more flexible labour force overall. And then the second area is around health, safety and well-being. Both PwC and Deloitte are predicting upticks in focus on employee care and organisational culture to reflect a more remote or flexible workforce. So let's look at what we're seeing come through the framework from our side. So in terms of 21 year to date, we have organisational change requirements or projects from 16 clients, budgets from 11,000 up to 2 million plus. Those 16 clients are spread across our 3 key categories. So 14 blue light, sorry, those projects, that doesn't add up to 16, does it? Those projects are spread across our key buyer communities of blue light, central government, local government. And as you can see, they're across a wide range of those themes that I talked about a minute or two ago. So from transformation through to change management, leadership, and so on. We've awarded projects to 22 suppliers, 17 of which are SMEs, particularly in focusing on specialist service provision for those areas that you can see in the centre box there. And in terms of geographic spread, I know organisational change can often be seen as a central government, large scale sort of requirement, but as you can see, we have opportunities across the country, sort of reflecting the range of clients that we have, both centrally and in the Northeast, but also in all of the regions across the UK. And then I just briefly want to talk around 3 case studies of specific projects that we've been supporting through the framework. So first of all, a central government department has launched a transformation program to make it the best and most effective organisation it can be. They have 3 objectives. So first of all, delivering the best possible outcomes for customers and the communities, as well as their ministerial team. So secondly, becoming a genuinely great place to work, and defining what great means for every member of the team, and looking particularly at opportunities for progression. And then thirdly, developing a culture that is more inclusive and shaped by the new values that they're defining. So types of workflows or work streams there are around financial efficiency, looking at science, innovation, technology and data, place and environments, cultures and way of working, skilled workforce and effective governance. So as you can see, a really wide-ranging scope of work, which has resulted in appointments across a range of specialist SMEs, as well as some of the broader consultancies. The second area is a large blue light organisation who were looking for a supplier to design and deliver a line management learning pathway, which is really an online toolkit to give their often shift-based employees 24/7 access to online learning support. And that include designing and creating a series of short videos or one-pagers across 30 topics, which really divided into themes around leadership and around how to from a line management point of view. And then the third area is in local government, which is really the start of their transformation initiative, and it's provide specialist support for coaching and development sessions to help review and improve the directorate structure. So as you can see, there's quite a range there in terms of central, blue light and local government projects that we're actively supporting through the work that we're doing. If you got, sorry, that I haven't got my final slide there, but if you have any questions about that organisational change sort of focus that we have, or the projects that we've been working on, do please pop them in the question box below, or get in touch through the contacts at the end. And now that's over to Paul.
Thanks, Jill. Thank you. Do you mind just shifting on a slide for me to avoid me needing to take control? Oh, I can control it.
I've just given you control.
Oh,
sorry, Paul.
That's quite all right. So I just want to give a bit of background about kind of wider opportunities that being part of the Blue Marketplace offer. Obviously, what we focused on so far has been very much focused on the kind of process associated with projects that are delivered via Neat Pro 3. And then also Jill's obviously given some background there around some of the case studies and opportunities and projects that have been delivered via that route. But from my perspective, I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of an overview about some of the other routes to market that we have. Also to kind of consider what wider partnership opportunities we have. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about some of the kind of procurement policy stuff that Bloom has been supporting our buyers with, which I think is important from a supplier perspective to really understand, give you the best opportunity to kind of win competitions when they're coming out through the Bloom marketplace. So as you can see there, via Crown Commercial Services, Bloom hold places on the Management Consulting Framework, that's MCF1, and Management Consulting Framework 2, MCF2, across a number of different lots. So actually for MCF1, we are on the education lot, and for MCF2 we are on business consultancy and also supply chain and procurement consultancy as well. So what that means is that any opportunities that are put out to market via those routes arrive into our Bloom inbox, and what we will do is we take a view at that point whether there are suppliers within our marketplace that could potentially deliver those projects, and we will in some instances come out to a number of suppliers to ask whether you may be interested, or in some cases suppliers will come to us and ask whether we are aware of a particular opportunity, and we will look at how we can support you to bid for those projects. So that is something that we offer right now, but we're also able to offer support in your kind of business development with any organisations that are using MCF. So the MCF2 framework does offer a route to market, a direct award route to market as well. So where organisations have worked within government departments in most cases who are using that framework, we can help you to continue that work or to deliver that work ongoing. So part of your kind of business development program, we can support you there. And I think also just worth mentioning that from a sort of wider partnership opportunity, we pride ourselves on being a very collaborative organisation. Obviously, we want you to get the most from our marketplace. So actually, if we can support you to develop partnerships within the marketplace to be able to bid for large pieces of work, then we'd be delighted to do that. And also if there are kind of wider opportunities where you feel that the Bloom service offer could benefit buyers of your services or indeed yourselves, then I'm happy to have a broader conversation about that. So that kind of covers kind of where else we can support you right now. We are also as many of you will be aware, kind of wholly focused on the public sector. And what that means is we keep a very keen eye on procurement policy as that is released by central government and via the Cabinet Office. And there have been a number of kind of interesting developments over the past 12 months around that. And a couple that I've kind of picked out in particular to mention. One is around social value. So a procurement policy note that was released in the summer of last year outlined that central government departments would be mandated to include social value in competitions that they are running to procure organisations to support them. So Bloom as an organisation is very much focused on social value and the delivery of social value. So that is now part and parcel of what we are asking for through our portal for competitions that go out. Now, there are thresholds for that, and it will be on the basis of the priorities of the buying organisation. But the reason that I'm raising it is that it's something for you to be aware of if you are bidding for opportunities through the marketplace. And as time goes on, the inclusion of social value in more and more projects will be absolutely kind of key, and how that is evaluated, monitored and measured as well will also be important. So this is something that we very much kind of pride ourselves on being able to do and support our marketplace to do it. So I think something to be very aware of when you're bidding for opportunities through Bloom. And the other point that does get raised, and many suppliers have kind of spoken to me directly, is about the kind of green paper around procurement transformation. And I think we very much as a business kind of welcome that green paper. I think there are a lot of potential developments that will support the public sector, and actually many of the things that Bloom are doing now are included in there as very kind of innovative tools, innovative approaches, and actually we've kind of been doing that for a while now. So we very much kind of welcome that green paper, and obviously we are looking to work with our kind of partners on that to make sure that we're able to continue to deliver whatever comes out over the next months and years. So I think that kind of just conclude from me. But as I said, you know, anything that is kind of broader than NEAT Pro 3, anything you want to discuss around kind of policy around procurement, then I'm more than happy to talk to people about that. I don't know if anyone's got any questions, but there is a question in here. How many suppliers do you have? So we have a question here, which is how many suppliers do you have? And how well do you know each of us to be able to invite the right suppliers to join a tender? And that's a really good question, actually, because a lot of what we do is obviously we have a number of suppliers within the marketplace. And when we are looking for suppliers, we are looking at the information that you have provided to us. So it's really important that you kind of keep that up to date, keep your accreditation live alongside all of the categories and subcategories that you are able to deliver within. And that allows our procurement operations team and our commercial team to identify those suppliers that are best placed to do that. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably worth adding, Paul, that if anybody has any specific questions about their profile, they can reach out to us, and we're happy to have a look at any things they might feel that we can add into or support them on with that.
And there's also there is a webinar on YouTube around accreditation and making sure that you are accredited in the right place, and that we're able to find your details. So do have a look at that. Super. Right, I'm going to hand you back on to Kev. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. As you can see, we've popped some contact details on screen for you now. So the accounts contact, if you have any finance or invoice related questions, provide to if you need access to the finance portal, or if you have any system-based questions and operational to do with your supplier profile and point in that area. But please, reach out to us, even if you're not sure where to send it in one of these contact points, and we will make sure it gets to the right place and get back to you. But we have no more open questions. So thank you very much to the presenters. Thank you very much for all of you joining us today. Thanks very much for all the attendees across the supply base, and we look forward to seeing you on the next webinar.